Welcome guys, we've had the Qatar Grand Prix and it's now that time where I go through and rate each and every one of the drivers and how they got on over the whole weekend. It's a little bit more difficult this one. We've got the sprint weekend and we'll go through my predictions, review, and well, what a race. Not quite really in the sense of good racing and good action, but it was tense all the while due to the World Championship and the permutations from that huge McLaren mistake again, back to back now, and Max Verstappen taking full advantage of that once again. And as ever, we always start with the driver ratings with the race winner, Max Verstappen. He absolutely stole the win on this one. When you look on pure pace, Oscar Piastri should have ran away and hid with this one, but for that frankly ridiculous call from the McLaren team not to pit under the safety car. Max Verstappen and his team, Hannah Schmitz, getting the credit and getting up on the podium, and rightly so, taking all the credit and the plaudits for pitting like almost every other team on the grid, bar Ocon, who didn't do that. And I think that was purely because of the undercut issues potentially that they went around on Ocon, but everybody pit. Max Verstappen pit, and it meant that he got a cheap pit stop where you knew you had to do two stops, one basically free pit stop out of the way, and he just lined up behind the McLarens and just had to pit once while they had to pit twice, and he just had to make sure he didn't get hammered by 26 seconds. And actually, what a job they did as a team from turning that car around in the sprint race to the main race. They always pull it off. They're always much improved from the sprint race to the main race. They've done it time again and again, and they did it this time because crucially, had he had the car that we'd seen in the sprint, I think McLaren might have got away with it, but credit to Red Bull, they did absolutely all the right things. Change of power units before the start of the race, but it was one of the selected units that they've already used, so no issues there. So unsure why they did that, but well, whatever it was, it worked. Stole the victory under the nose of Oscar Piastri, and it was a fantastic 10 out of 10 race for me for the sprint race. Not so good. Qualified in 6th place, moved up into 4th place. Probably the best that car had in it. Lots of bouncing issues throughout much of the sprint part of the weekend, and that was a difficult. I've given him a 6 out of 10 for that. So overall, I've given him a 9 out of 10. Second place man, Oscar Piastri, and what a kick in the teeth is that his championship over, really costing his own team, costing him the championship by the looks of this one. Back on song after a horrendous 5-race run, but he was absolutely on it, flying from day one at the Qatar Grand Prix circuit, and it should have been a Grand Slam for him actually, because he got the sprint qualifying pole, had the sprint win, had pole position for the main race, and looked in the box seat, but for that strange call not to pit him under the safety car, you got a cheap free pit stop. Even if Max Verstappen had got past and didn't pit, he would have still had Max to pit, and he got the free pit stop under it. Whenever you think, whatever you think about it, how much you think about it, the more the decision is an absolute no-brainer. Yeah, he was speechless, no words, and I'm sure he's probably still trying to find them now after this weekend. He's got a huge mountain now to try and make up on Lando Norris. 16 points is a difference. He needs a win, and Norris lower than 7th. The likelihood of that is basically effectively he needs to win and Lando Norris to DNF. For him to, take the championship in Abu Dhabi. It's still possible, but it's a massive ask really, isn't it? And yeah, we've not seen anything really like that happen. We've obviously seen the DNF for Lando Norris. Anything is possible. All the parts on these cars now at the end of their cycles, just one more run to go for them, and will they survive? Oscar Piastri obviously hoping not on Lando Norris's side, but yeah, the worst call at the worst time. He did absolutely everything right this weekend, and it is an absolute kick in the teeth because well, it's cost him the chance of a title. Had it been the other way around and he was taking the win, Norris down in the positions that he would have been just 12 points behind. And we'd be talking like we are talking of Max Verstappen, that it's a real solid chance and an opportunity that he could pull this off. But as it stands, it's an uphill task. And, well, despite doing everything right, I give him a 10 out of 10 for the sprint, and I've given him, well, it should really be a 10 out of 10 for the race because he did absolutely nothing wrong. So I'm going to give him a 10 out of 10. Third place man, Carlos Sainz. What a race weekend he has had, this lad. Second podium for the Williams and clinches 5th in the constructors for the team. And well, interesting that it's him that's done that towards the end of the season, because he was so underwhelming when he turned up in that Williams outfit, and his first 7-8 races have been on the poor and average side, and you were questioning now this whole hype about Carlos Sainz, but when he's come good, boy, has he pulled it off. What a brilliant race from him. Everything on merit. Qualified in 7th, a great start, made up 2 places, and then made up that 4th place under the safety car when Kimi Antonelli had to wait behind George Russell, and that gave him 1 more position. And then from there on, it was just on pure pace, and that was the great thing about it, was lapping within 2-3 tenths of a second of Max Verstappen, and it just held on for on merit, an absolutely brilliant podium, and that's the best bit about this one. It wasn't looked into, it wasn't anything else. Actual real solid race pace, managed it really well towards the end, flying and the car's parts falling off that car at the end, but he kept it all together, and brings home a fantastic podium and P5 in the constructors for the team. Sprint race was pretty solid, a P8 in sprint qualifying, finished there, so got a solitary point there as well. So I gave him a 8 out of 10 for the sprint race. I'll give him a 10 out of 10 for the main race, but considering it's a podium in that Williams, I've given him a 10 out of 10. 4th place man, Lando Norris, and it's not been a clean race weekend by any stretch for Lando Norris. Did what he needed to do in the sprint race, qualified 3rd, finished 3rd in the end. I gave him a 5 out of 10 for that because I don't think it was anything spectacular. That car was quick, and he just couldn't make any impression on George Russell. In the race, it could have gone even worse had he not had a 2.2 second stop from the McLaren boys. Got him out ahead of Fernando Alonso, because that was half a second in it and he would have been behind Fernando. And we've seen how much he struggled to get past Kimi Antonelli, and Fernando can be a right dog when it comes to defending the master at it, really. So, yeah, absolutely, lucky on that side of things. So just about got away with that, and then came out behind Carlos Sainz and Kimi Antonelli, because his pace after the first stop was really poor, actually. Max Verstappen was catching him hand over fist, despite him having the fresher tyres than Max Verstappen. So not sure really where his race pace was. Then when he got lucky, actually, that there was a mistake from Kimi Antonelli, because for all the world it didn't look like he'd be able to pass him either, and he can thank Antonelli massively, because that just means now he needs a podium heading into the final races. I said it before, it's easier said than done when it comes to the final race of the season in the championship. We've seen really strange results in the past. Pressure really gets to you. It's his first world title. He's up against Max Verstappen. He's got his teammate in the mix as well. That makes it, just that little bit more harder. And he's also got his team, which seem to be doing everything possible to give this title to Max Verstappen as it stands. But it's still in his hands. He's got a 12-point lead. Everybody on the grid would want to be in his position because it's his to lose. And he just needs to bring it home in the top 3, and he's got the car to do it. It's just now in his hand. Can he pull it off? But for this race weekend, a pretty poor one. Lucky it wasn't 5th. Finished 4th in the end. I've given him a 5 out of 10 because I thought it was actually pretty disappointing, really. 5th place man, Kimi Antonelli, and it would have been a great weekend had he managed to hold on to 4th place, but he'd be kicking himself for that small mistake at the end to give that position to Lando Norris, because he defended brilliantly well, much like what we saw last time out in Vegas. And for all the world, it looked like he'd pull it off again. He's been getting a lot of stick actually from I think Max Verstappen fans, and also didn't help by the call on the Red Bull pit wall that, you know, from Max's engineer, that GP, that basically he'd thrown that position, gave it to Lando Norris. Helmut Marko also weighing in on that and Toto defending him as he deserves to be defended. GP apologising for that, Red Bull apologising for that call, said that they've got it wrong. He doesn't deserve the pressure that he's been put under and the criticism, and should really just be getting off his back. He was a mistake. He's still a rookie, but it's such a shame because had it been that he held on to that 4th place, it would have been absolutely incredible for the championship. Such a shame that it's not, but he had actually a pretty solid race in the end. It could have been pretty spectacular with that 4th, and in the sprint he qualified in 7th, finished in 5th in the end. It's been a pretty solid weekend from him in the end. At the start of the weekend, he didn't look like he had it in him, struggling to get to grips with this track. He was comfortably beaten by George Russell, but then in the race he's come good, beats his teammate again in the main race, and yeah, he can be pretty happy with this weekend, although probably disappointed with that mistake. I've given him a 7 out of 10. 6th place man, George Russell, and it's, well, a horrible race weekend for him in the end. Decent qualifying in 4th, finished in 6th. He lost 3 places at the start, and then it was a struggle from there. Helped him to P6 from the puncher from Isaac Hadjar. Sprint was actually much better, just missed out on pole position, started in 2nd place on there, and finished in 2nd in the race. It just didn't build on that, so I gave him a 9 out of 10 for the sprint. I gave him a 6 out of 10 for the main race. I've given him overall a 7 out of 10, George Russell, for this one. 7th place man, Fernando Alonso, started 8th, finished in 7th in the end. He started 4th in the sprint qualifying, which was probably his best part of his race weekend, and finished 7th in the sprint. I gave him a 7 out of 10 for that. In the main race, though, he did what Fernando Alonso does, just drives his own race, blocks and holds everybody up. There was a massive gap in front of him by the time the second stops came around. Even the first stops for the McLaren boys, they came out ahead of him, only just on Lando Norris's side though. But it's a shame he didn't have a little bit more pace in the race, or he was just really just trying to get these tyres to the end and ensure, like we've seen him do before, that he just brings home a pretty solid race result. Would have finished 8th, but for that Isaac Hadjar puncture, helped him into P7. I've given him a 7 out of 10. 8th place man, Charles Leclerc, started 10th, finished 8th in the end. In the sprint, he started 9th, finished 13th in the sprint. Had a poor sprint race, bad start on that one. I gave him just a 4 out of 10 for that. In the race, wasn't much better. The safety car held him up into P9, and then he made up a further place, obviously, with the puncture. He only made up places, really, because of the DNFs. Obviously, helped with the Hülkenberg and Pierre Gasly incident. They were both ahead of him. So 3 places really made up from that. But otherwise, the car was absolutely shocking. And he would have finished out of the points for the DNFs. It's just another race weekend where this car is probably the worst it's been all season, and he'll be most disappointed with that. Ferrari now P4 in the Constructors, and it's just run this race now and the final race of the season. He'll be hoping to just finish on some positive note in Abu Dhabi, but nothing really to fight for. For him, I've given him a 5 out of 10. 9th place man, Liam Lawson, started in 12th, finished 9th in the end. A pretty eventful start for him, defended hard from Lewis Hamilton, but from there onwards, it was Yeah, pretty steady race, nothing spectacular. He was closing on Ollie Berman, but he was helped past him when Berman had his shocker of a pit stop, and that moved him up into P9. Otherwise, though, can't help but feel a little bit disappointed for his race weekend, because Isaac Hadjar comfortably had the beating of him all weekend. His sprint was really poor, qualified 17th, finished 14th in the end on that one. I gave him a 5 out of 10 there, and for the race it was average, nothing spectacular. I gave him a 6 out of 10. So overall I've just stuck with a 6 out of 10. A little bit disappointing, but he'll be happy to pick up some points. 10th place finisher Yuki Tsunoda started 15th, finished 10th in the sprint. Was his best sprint. Out-qualified Max Verstappen for the first time ever in 5th place. Finished in 5th in the end in the sprint race. I gave him a 9 out of 10 for that, because I was mega impressed with the way that ran. Qualifying, though, was an absolute kick in the teeth, wasn't it? To go out in P16 on Q1. Obviously helped up to P15 after Gabby Bortoletto's penalty, but in decent enough start, and then held up to P12 after the safety car. Got himself up into P10 and some points, and then made... After considering it's a difficult race, this one, it proved difficult to overtake. Even the faster cars, and the fastest car on the field was struggling to get past Antonelli, and Yuki Tsunoda also was going to struggle. It was a real once the first well, basically everybody pit under the safety car on lap 7. There was no strategy called or options for him to make up more places, and he had to just do it on track when overtaking was so difficult that the DRS was pretty frustrating, and the dirty air just makes it really difficult to try and get yourself in a position to, make that move down into turn 1. Tuesday is D-Day for him. Will he keep that seat in the Red Bull? The lineup will be decided. Has he done quite enough? In my opinion, probably not, but we'll find out soon enough if he keeps a seat in the Red Bull outfit, and that's either with a V-carb or in this main seat up at the front. We'll find out soon enough. But yeah, a 9 out of 10 for the sprint, a 7 out of 10 for the main race, but I've given him overall an 8 out of 10. One of his better weekends in the Red Bull. 11th place finisher Alex Albon started 14th, finished 11th in a sprint race. He qualified 10th, finished 10th there. I gave him a 5 out of 10 on that one. In the main race, it wasn't anything spectacular at all, was it? Stuck behind Yuki Tsunoda, moved up into P11, obviously because of the Isaac Hadjar puncture, and another weekend where he's really struggled. And there was performance in this car, as we've seen with Carlos Sainz. So he'll be kicking himself a little bit. That poor qualifying session really set him back on the opportunity to pick up some good points. And another missed opportunity from him. This second part of the season hasn't gone so well. He's still 9 points ahead of Carlos Sainz in the championship. I imagine he will hold on to that now. Unless Carlos Sainz sticks it on for another podium in the final race of the season, which if he does that, that'll be spectacular. But yeah, let's see how it gets on in the final race of the season. But a pretty disappointing race weekend for him overall. I've given him a 4 out of 10. 12th place man, Lewis Hamilton started 17th, finished in 12th in the end. Had a great start, made up 3 or 4 places up early, and then obviously up into P13 after the safety car. And then he just pretty much stayed there. The best of it was really at the start, where he got a really good start, but no pace or any good pace at any part in the race weekend. It's been a real struggle for him. A shocking qualifying session, a poor sprint as well. Started 18th, finished 17th. One of his worst weekends, I think. I've given him a 3 out of 10 for the sprint, a 5 out of 10 for the main race. So overall a 4 out of 10. He'll be just hoping to see the back of this season and hope for better next time out. 13th place man, Gabby Bortoletto, started in 19th, finished in 13th in the end, made up a good chunk, 4 places after the safety car, which really worked in his favour after getting that 5-second penalty or 5-place grid penalty from last time out carried out into this race weekend, and then was behind Lewis Hamilton. and was stuck behind him for much of the race. Couldn't get close enough to him to make a move. And that was pretty much all she wrote. A pretty boring race from him, like he said. Shame about the penalty, because potentially could a point have been on the card. The car did show promising pace in the hands of Nico Hülkenberg, but that penalty and him starting so way down, you know, really costs you in the way the regulations and the cars work with this regulation, with following and overtaking being really difficult. For the sprint, he qualified in 13th, finished 11th there. I gave him a 6 out of 10 for that. I gave him a 6 out of 10 for the race, considering he did make up some positions, 6 in fact, obviously helped by 4 on the DNFs, but still moved forward in the race. And did a pretty decent enough job, but nothing spectacular. I've given him a 6 out of 10. 14th place man, Franco Colapinto, and he's had a difficult weekend. He said he really struggled to get to grips with this track. Qualified 20th and last for the sprint qualifying, finished last as well in the sprint race. Qualified 20th and last for the main race, but finished 14th in the end. Managed to beat Ocon and his teammate, only because obviously big damage for Gasly and Ocon serving 2 penalties, which really were a kick in the teeth for him. But yeah, he'll be disappointed because the car actually looked promising and had some pace, as we see in the hand of Pierre Gasly. But Colapinto couldn't really extract the performance out of this car that Pierre Gasly did. So a really difficult weekend, and we gave him a 3 out of 10 for the main race. I gave him a 5 out of 10 for the sprint, even though he started there and finished there, but it was nothing spectacular. And I've given him a 4 out of 10. 15th place man, Esteban Ocon, started 16th, finished 15th, got a false start penalty, didn't he? And then from there onwards, his race just went sour. Apparently didn't take his first penalty properly, had to take it again, and that was just a real shamble once you had to do that. And 2 stops also. Came out last, but managed to beat Pierre Gasly, I think only because of the damage that Gasly was carrying. Yeah, a horrible weekend overall again for Ocon. Started 15th in qualifying for the sprint, finished 15th there, so I gave him a 5 out of 10 for that, a 3 out of 10 for the race, and overall a 4 out of 10 for Ocon for this weekend. 16th place man, Pierre Gasly, and he'll be most disappointed because he had a really good qualifying session. To get that car into P9 was absolutely spectacular. I managed to extract performance where it just didn't look like that was on. In the sprint, he started 19th, finished there in the end, so it wasn't really a great sprint from him, so I'll give him just a 5 out of 10 for that. But yeah, the incident with Nico Hülkenberg really ruined his race. Was a racing incident. I'm not quite sure what Pierre Gasly could have done on this one really to help Hülkenberg out, but it just looked like a racing incident. Thankfully no penalty for Gasly, but I mean it was damage enough where he lost a load of positions, got serious damage to his car, and just had to drive that thing home. A difficult weekend, but a really promising qualifying was spectacular from him, so I gave him a 6 out of 10, and mainly because of the qualifying. On to the DNFs, and the first of them, Nico Hülkenberg, lap 7, obviously with his incident with Pierre Gasly. Really disappointing because the race was going well. He qualified 11th, but got himself up into P10 pretty quickly early on, and then went for the move on Pierre Gasly, which got him into P9. Completely misjudged it, I think. Is it more his fault than Gasly's? It's hard to say, just the way that they just both met after the overtake and the way that corner is. Yeah, really difficult for him. Disappointing DNF because it looked like points were on the card for him there. In the sprint, it qualified in 14th, finished 16th, so a disappointing sprint. I gave him a 5 out of 10 for that. And for the race, I've given him a 5 out of 10 just because it was, I think, his mistake for that incident. The next DNF was Ollie Berman on lap 46, and a real kick in the teeth for him because his race was going so strong. Started in 13th and he was running behind Charles Leclerc, but in the points in P10, managed to keep Liam Lawson back, and then in the pit lane managed to run over something and then got a 10-second stop-go penalty after that, and then just failed to pick up the points in the end, which really looked like they were on. So I'd be most disappointed with that. It looked like a promising weekend, but it just didn't quite work out for him in the end. In the sprint, he qualified 12th, finished 12th in the sprint race. So pretty average race weekend for him from there. But yeah, really costly mistake in the pit lane, whether that was down to him or the team. Still to look into that one, but yeah, hard to judge. I've given him a 7 out of 10 because he was running well until the DNF. Next to the DNFs, Isaac Hadjar, lap 55, and he had a very, very strong race weekend. A brilliant qualifying session in P6, and looked like P6 was on for him, but for that puncture. So cruel and such a shame because he was on for a brilliant weekend up until that point. In the sprint, qualified 11th, finished 9th in the end, just outside of the points. I gave him a 7 out of 10 for that, and he gave him a 8 out of 10 for the race because it was looking like good points were on. And then the last of the DNFs, Lance Stroll, on the just penultimate lap, I believe, started 18th, finished didn't finish in the end, got 5-second penalty also for speeding in the pit lane. Not sure what his DNF was for again, but he was comfortably hammered by Fernando Alonso all weekend. The sprint, he qualified 16th, finished in 19th, so I've given him a 2 out of 10. On to the predictions. Well, it's been better than it has been in the last few race weekends. For the sprint qualifying, I had Lando Norris to take pole position, Russell second, and Max Verstappen in third. In fact, it was Oscar Piastri with a brilliant pole lap. Russell was second, so I got that one right, and Lando Norris in third place. For the sprint race, I had Lando Norris to take the win. It was Oscar Piastri with a brilliant controlled sprint win from there. Max Verstappen I had for second. It was George Russell, and in third I thought it'd be Oscar Piastri, but it was Lando Norris. In qualifying, I had Max Verstappen to take pole position, Lando Norris to line up second, and Charles Leclerc in third, but the Ferraris had a shocker. It was in fact Oscar Piastri on pole position. Norris did line up second, and a brilliant P3 for Max Verstappen in the main race. For the race, I had Max Verstappen to take the win. He much obliged on that one. I thought Lando Norris would bring it home in second. It was Oscar Piastri, and in third I had Piastri, but it was a brilliant podium for Carlos Sainz. I thought it'd be a good weekend for the Sauber. Unfortunately not. It looked promising at one point with Nico Hülkenberg, but no points despite looking promising. I thought it'd be a bad weekend for the V-Carb. I'm going to say it was, despite Liam Lawson picking up 2 points in the race, but it should have been much more but for the Isaac Hadjar incident. But yeah, there we have it. Well, if we get the same result next time out in Abu Dhabi, Max Verstappen will be world champion. Let that sink in. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment. As always, see you on the next one.